5 American supercarriers converge on the Western Pacific, the largest fleet deployment since Desert Storm. President Trump's new naval doctrine isn't just policy, it's overwhelming force projection that redefines regional power dynamics. USS Gerald R. Ford, USS Nimitz, USS Carl Vinson, USS Abraham Lincoln, USS Theodore Roosevelt. 5 carrier strike groups representing 500,000 tons of American naval power, 450 combat aircraft, 75 escort vessels, 30,000 sailors. This is naval dominance at a scale that hasn't been seen in 3 decades. This is the Trump administration's answer to growing regional tensions and territorial ambitions that threaten freedom of navigation in the world's most economically critical waters. The strategic message is unmistakable. The Pacific Ocean remains American-dominated maritime space. No regional power possesses the capability to challenge 5 carrier strike groups operating in coordinated formation. No combination of anti-access area denial systems can threaten this concentration of naval power. This is deterrence through overwhelming technological superiority and operational capability that adversaries cannot match with their current fleet compositions or weapon systems. Navy Power TV takes you inside the most powerful naval deployment of the 21st century and reveals why this changes everything about Pacific security calculations for the next decade. The Trump doctrine breaks from previous administrations in fundamental ways. Previous strategies emphasized distributed operations and smaller carrier presence to reduce vulnerability. The new approach concentrates maximum force to demonstrate absolute capability and eliminate any ambiguity about American commitment to Pacific security. This isn't about subtle signaling. This is about overwhelming demonstration that makes military challenges unthinkable for any rational adversary. 5 carriers mean 450 F-35C Lightning that's Anu and F/A-18E F. Super Hornet fighters can launch simultaneously. That's more combat aircraft than most air forces possess in their entire inventory. The sortie generation rate exceeds 600 flights per day during sustained operations. This creates air superiority across millions of square kilometers of ocean and airspace that no regional power can contest with their current fighter inventory or operational capabilities. Which capability makes 5 carriers unstoppable? A. Fighter numbers. B. AEGIS defense network. Submarine wolf packs. Comment your answer below. The escort vessels create the most sophisticated integrated air defense network ever deployed. 15 Ticonderoga-class cruisers and 30 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers form overlapping engagement zones. AEGIS Baseline 10 systems link every sensor to every shooter through cooperative engagement capability. 1 ship detects the threat. 45 ships can engage it. This is network-centric warfare that multiplies defensive capability exponentially beyond what individual platforms could achieve operating independently. Chinese military planners study satellite imagery of the American deployment. Their DF-21D and DF-26 carrier killer missiles were designed to keep American carriers beyond 1,500 kilometers from Chinese shores. But 5 carrier strike groups create multiple target sets that overwhelm Chinese targeting systems. Their limited inventory of carrier killers cannot engage all American vessels simultaneously. Their targeting satellites cannot maintain continuous track on 45 major surface combatants spread across thousands of kilometers of ocean, while those vessels employ sophisticated electronic warfare and deception measures. The Trump administration makes the strategic calculation explicit. China invested in area denial. America responds with overwhelming presence that renders area denial irrelevant. When 5 carriers operate together, their combined defensive capability defeats any realistic missile attack that China could launch with their current inventory. The mathematics of saturation warfare collapse when defenders possess this level of defensive depth and weapons density. Stay with me. The submarine deployment about to be revealed makes this fleet absolutely untouchable by any adversary. 15 Virginia-class attack submarines form underwater picket lines ahead of the carrier groups. These submarines create an anti-submarine warfare barrier that no hostile submarine can penetrate without detection and immediate prosecution. Chinese Song-class and Yuan-class diesel-electric submarines attempting to approach the carrier groups face American submarines with superior sonar systems, superior quieting technology, and superior weapons that guarantee their destruction long before they achieve firing solutions on surface targets. Navy Power TV shows you why the Trump Pacific deployment represents more than just ships and aircraft. This is comprehensive maritime dominance across every warfare domain that forces complete recalculation of what regional powers can and cannot attempt against American interests in contested waters. The E-2D Advanced Hawkeye. Early warning aircraft orbit continuously above the carrier groups. Their AN/APY-9 radar systems detect threats at ranges exceeding 550 kilometers. Chinese J-20 stealth fighters attempting to approach are tracked, despite their reduced radar cross-section. The Americans see everything. Chinese pilots know they're being tracked. This psychological pressure degrades combat effectiveness before any engagement begins. When pilots know the adversary possesses complete situational awareness, their tactical decision-making becomes defensive and reactive rather than aggressive and proactive. EA-18G Growler. Electronic warfare aircraft accompany every strike package. Their AN/ALQ-99 jamming pods and ALQ-227 systems corrupt enemy radar and communications across broad frequency spectrums. Chinese integrated air defense systems face jamming techniques refined through decades of actual combat operations against sophisticated threats. Their S-400-derived HQ-9 systems and indigenous air defense radars cannot maintain target tracks against American electronic warfare capability that represents technological generations of development advantage. The P-8A Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft extend surveillance coverage across the entire Western Pacific. These aircraft carry advanced sonar buoys, magnetic anomaly detectors, and comprehensive sensor suites that detect submarines at ranges where those submarines cannot effectively hide in ocean thermal layers or background acoustic noise. Chinese submarines attempting to transit to operational areas face detection and continuous tracking that make successful attacks against carrier groups essentially impossible with their current submarine quieting technology. How many vertical launch cells protect 5 carrier strike groups? A. 2,000 cells, B. 4,000 cells, C. 6,000 plus cells. Answer at the end. The Trump Doctrine addresses critics who questioned carrier vulnerability in modern warfare. 5 carriers operating together create mutual defense that individual carriers cannot achieve. Their combined AEGIS systems create overlapping engagement zones with no gaps in coverage. Their fighter aircraft provide continuous combat air patrol that no adversary can penetrate without sustaining catastrophic losses. Their submarine screen prevents underwater approaches. Their early warning aircraft eliminate surprise. The integrated defense network makes successful attacks require resources that no regional power currently possesses. Chinese military leadership faces uncomfortable strategic reality. They invested heavily in anti-carrier weapons based on assumptions that American carriers would operate individually or in small groups within range of shore-based missiles. The Trump deployment invalidates those assumptions. 5 carriers operating 2,000 kilometers from Chinese shores cannot be effectively engaged by shore-based systems. Chinese naval aviation lacks the range and capability to threaten carrier groups at that distance. Their submarine force cannot penetrate American ASW barriers without unacceptable losses. The economic implications ripple across the region. International shipping routes remain open. Freedom of navigation continues unimpeded. Regional nations see tangible evidence that American naval power guarantees their security and economic access. This reassurance stabilizes regional politics and reduces pressure on smaller nations to accommodate Chinese territorial demands or economic coercion. The presence of overwhelming American naval capability changes diplomatic calculations more effectively than years of negotiations or economic incentives. Quantity versus quality reaches definitive conclusion. China has more ships, America has capability. comment Q for quantity, or L for quality. President Trump's public statements emphasize American commitment backed by visible demonstration. Previous administrations talked about pivots to Asia and rebalancing strategies. The Trump Doctrine deploys 5 carrier strike groups and lets that deployment speak louder than any diplomatic communique could achieve. Regional allies see commitment. Regional adversaries see overwhelming capability. International shipping sees guaranteed access. Everybody gets the message without ambiguity or room for misinterpretation. The cost of this deployment exceeds $50 million per day in operational expenses. Critics question whether America can sustain this level of presence. Supporters argue the deterrence value far exceeds the cost. 1 day of 5 carrier operations costs less than 1 day of major combat operations would require. The deployment prevents conflict through overwhelming demonstration, rather than allowing tensions to escalate toward actual shooting wars that would cost exponentially more in both financial terms and human casualties. Navy Power TV reveals the strategic calculations that keep Chinese military planners awake at night. American naval capability can concentrate overwhelming force faster than regional powers can mobilize effective responses, and that concentration creates combat capability gaps that cannot be bridged with current technology, regardless of how much regional powers invest in anti-access weapon systems. Japanese self-defense forces coordinate with the American deployment. South Korean naval assets integrate into the broader security framework. Australian warships join operational patrols. The American carrier presence enables alliance cohesion that individual allied navies cannot achieve independently. The Trump Doctrine recognizes that overwhelming American capability provides the foundation for effective multilateral security cooperation that smaller nations can contribute to without bearing primary responsibility for deterring aggression. The 5 carriers maintain continuous flight operations around the clock. Catapult launches every 45 seconds during surge operations. Recovery operations every 60 seconds. This operational tempo demonstrates sustainability that adversaries cannot match. Chinese carriers lack the experience, the trained personnel, and the logistical depth to maintain comparable operations for extended periods. The gap in operational capability exceeds the gap in platform technology. If you believe 5 American carriers create unstoppable naval dominance, type Navy Power TV right now. The Nimitz-class carriers demonstrate reliability through decades of proven service. The Ford-class carrier represents next-generation capability with electromagnetic launch systems and advanced arresting gear. Together, they provide capability mix that combines proven performance with cutting-edge technology. Chinese naval development cannot match this combination of operational maturity and technological advancement within their current procurement timeline or budget constraints. Russian observers watch the deployment with concern for different reasons. Their Pacific Fleet cannot contest 5 American carrier strike groups. Their naval aviation lacks the capability to threaten this concentration of American power. Their submarine force in the Pacific theater cannot achieve numerical advantage against 15 Virginia-class boats backed by comprehensive ASW aircraft coverage. The Trump deployment demonstrates American capability to dominate Pacific waters while simultaneously maintaining Atlantic and Mediterranean presence that prevents Russian naval expansion in those theaters. The strategic implications extend beyond immediate deterrence. 5 carriers demonstrate American ability to concentrate overwhelming force when national interests require it. Future adversaries must calculate their strategies based on this demonstrated capability rather than assumptions about distributed American deployments being vulnerable to local numerical superiority or anti-access weapons. The Trump Doctrine reestablishes carrier strike groups as the ultimate expression of American naval power that no combination of regional forces can effectively challenge. Which technology will define Pacific naval dominance in 2030? Unmanned carrier aircraft, hypersonic ship-launched missiles, or directed energy weapons? Drop your prediction. The deployment continues for 6 months. Continuous presence, unbroken operations. 0 incidents where adversaries tested American resolve or capability. This is deterrence working exactly as intended. The presence of overwhelming force prevents conflict more effectively than limited deployments that might encourage adversaries to test American commitment or probe for weaknesses in defensive coverage. The logistical achievement behind this deployment deserves recognition. 5 carrier strike groups require massive supply chain coordination. Combat Logistics Force ships deliver fuel, food, ammunition, and spare parts continuously. Underway replenishment operations happen every 72 hours for each carrier group. This sustainment capability demonstrates American logistical depth that regional powers simply cannot replicate with their current fleet auxiliary compositions or supply chain infrastructure. Each carrier consumes approximately 600,000 gallons of fuel weekly during high-tempo operations. The escorts add another 200,000 gallons per destroyer weekly. The logistical footprint exceeds anything regional navies could sustain beyond their immediate coastal waters. This is what decades of global naval operations experience creates. The ability to project and sustain overwhelming force thousands of miles from home ports for extended periods without degradation in combat capability or operational readiness. The Trump administration coordinates diplomatic messaging with naval deployment. Regional allies receive high-level visits from American officials while carriers operate offshore. The timing is deliberate. Diplomatic assurances backed by visible military capability carry more weight than promises alone could achieve. South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines see concrete evidence of American commitment rather than just diplomatic rhetoric about security partnerships. Chinese economic coercion tactics lose effectiveness when American carriers demonstrate commitment to keeping international waters open for commerce. Regional nations feel less pressure to accommodate Chinese demands when they know American naval power guarantees their economic access to global markets. This is how military capability creates space for diplomacy rather than replacing it. The carriers enable smaller nations to negotiate from positions of confidence rather than fear. The environmental monitoring systems aboard the carrier groups track Chinese submarine movements with unprecedented accuracy. The Virginia-class submarines deploy advanced towed arrays and flank arrays that detect submarines at ranges exceeding 100 kilometers in favorable acoustic conditions. Chinese submarines attempting to shadow American carrier groups find themselves tracked continuously by multiple platforms. Their attempts at stealth are defeated by sensor technology and signal processing capability that represents generations of acoustic research and development advantage. Navy Power TV examines the training advantage that amplifies American technological superiority. Each carrier air wing conducts more flight operations monthly than Chinese naval aviation accomplishes quarterly across their entire force. Experience matters in naval warfare. American pilots have thousands of carrier landings. Chinese pilots are still building basic proficiency. American sailors have decades of collective experience operating carriers in every ocean under all conditions. Chinese crews are learning fundamentals on their first operational deployments. The maintenance readiness of American carriers reflects decades of industrial base development. Newport News Shipbuilding possesses institutional knowledge that cannot be replicated quickly. Chinese shipyards are building carriers, but they lack the operational experience to know what engineering choices matter most for sustained combat operations. American carriers benefit from lessons learned across 13 supercarriers operating since the 1970s. That institutional knowledge prevents design mistakes that China won't discover until their carriers face actual operational stresses. The Trump deployment proves carrier strike groups remain the ultimate expression of national power in maritime domains. Hypersonic missiles get attention in defense journals. But 5 carrier strike groups operating with comprehensive defensive systems prove that offensive technology alone cannot overcome integrated defensive networks backed by superior sensors, electronic warfare, and operational doctrine refined through continuous real-world operations. Carrier aviation proves its enduring relevance. Critics predicted that anti-ship missiles made carriers obsolete. 5 carrier strike groups operating with impunity in contested waters prove those predictions wrong. Defensive technology evolved faster than offensive threats. AEGIS systems, electronic warfare, integrated air defense networks and comprehensive ASW capability render anti-access strategies ineffective against well-defended carrier groups with proper escort compositions and operational doctrine. Technology supremacy confirmed. 5 carriers, 450 aircraft, 6,000 plus vertical launch cells across 45 AEGIS vessels. That's the answer to our quiz. 6,000 VLS cells containing SM-2, SM-6, SM-3, ESSM, and Tomahawk missiles in flexible loadouts optimized for comprehensive threat engagement across all warfare domains simultaneously. Can regional powers develop capabilities to challenge 5 carrier deployments? Current evidence suggests no. American technological advantage in sensors, weapons, electronic warfare, and operational integration continues expanding faster than regional competitors can close the gap. What's next for Pacific strategy? Continued American naval dominance backed by next-generation systems that will further widen capability gaps and make challenges to American sea control increasingly costly and ultimately futile for any rational adversary. Subscribe to Navy Power TV, where elite naval power meets cutting-edge technology. Superior fleets, advanced weapons. Navy Power TV delivers analysis of American naval supremacy that keeps the Pacific Ocean free and